The advertisement in the newspaper had been running for 3 weeks without a single response, and Bennett Kincaid was beginning to think his ranch would remain as empty and cheerless as it had been since his mother passed away 2 years prior. He stood on the porch of his sprawling ranch house outside Sonora, California, watching the summer sun of 1878 paint the Sierra Nevada foothills in shades of amber and gold, feeling the weight of loneliness settle deeper into his bones with each passing day. At 29 years old, he had built one of the most successful cattle operations in Tuolumne County. But what good was prosperity when he came home each evening to cold meals, dust-covered furniture, and the hollow echo of his own footsteps? The sound of a wagon approaching made him look up from his contemplation. A weathered stagecoach was making its way up the long drive, unusual enough at this hour to pique his curiosity. Bennett stepped down from the porch, brushing dust from his work shirt, squinting against the afternoon glare. The coach came to a stop in front of the house, and the driver, old Pete Morrison from town, gave him a knowing nod. "Got a passenger for you, Bennett," Pete called down. "Says she is here about the housekeeper position." Before Bennett could respond, the coach door opened, and a young woman stepped down with careful dignity despite the obvious weariness in her movements. She was slender and tall, with dark auburn hair pinned back in a practical bun, though several strands had escaped to frame a face that was more interesting than conventionally pretty. Her traveling dress was well made, but showed signs of hard wear, and she carried a single worn carpetbag that seemed to contain all her worldly possessions. What struck Bennett most were her eyes, a striking shade of green that met his gaze directly, without coyness or calculation, just honest assessment. "Mr. Kincaid." Her voice was clear and steady, with a slight accent he could not quite place, something Eastern perhaps, refined but not affected. "My name is Zelda Hartwell. I have come about the position you advertised." Bennett found himself momentarily at a loss for words, which was unusual for him. He had expected someone older, perhaps a widow looking for respectable work, not this young woman who could not be much past 25. "Miss Hartwell," he finally managed, recovering his composure. "I appreciate you making the journey, but I have to be honest, I was expecting someone with more years on them." "I am 26 years old, Mr. Kincaid, and I have been managing households since I was 18, Zelda said, setting her bag down but keeping her spine straight. "I can cook, clean, mend, preserve food, manage accounts, and tend to illness. I do not drink, I do not gossip, and I do not shirk hard work. If you are concerned about propriety, I assure you my reputation is spotless, and I can provide references from my previous employers in San Francisco." "San Francisco?" Bennett's eyebrows rose. "That is quite a distance." "What brings you all the way to Sonora?" Something flickered across her face, a shadow of pain or regret, but it was gone so quickly he might have imagined it. "I needed a change of scenery and a fresh start. I understand that Sonora is a growing town with opportunities." "Your advertisement seemed like exactly what I was looking for." Bennett studied her for a long moment. There was a story there, he could tell, something that had driven her away from the city to seek work in a remote cattle ranch. But he also saw determination in the set of her jaw, competence in the way she held herself, and a kind of quiet strength that reminded him of his mother. Lord knew he needed help, and beggars could not be choosers. "The work is not easy," he said slowly. "This is a working ranch, not a city household. I have 3 ranch hands who expect 3 meals a day, hot and substantial. The house has not had proper attention in 2 years. I am gone from before dawn until after dark most days during the busy seasons. You would be largely on your own." "That sounds perfectly acceptable to me," Zelda replied without hesitation. "The pay is $40 a month, plus room and board. You would have your own room, separate entrance if you want it for propriety's sake. I keep a wagon you can use to go into town when needed. Sundays are yours to do with as you please." "That is more than generous, Mr. Kincaid." Bennett made his decision. "All right then, Miss Hartwell. Let us give it a trial period of 1 month. If it does not work out for either of us, no hard feelings, and I will pay your passage to wherever you want to go." For the first time, Zelda's composed expression broke into a smile, and Bennett felt something shift in his chest. It was a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes and transformed her whole face, revealing a warmth that had been hidden beneath her careful control. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. You will not regret this." He showed her into the house, suddenly acutely aware of just how neglected it had become. Dust covered every surface, dishes were piled in the kitchen, and the whole place had the stale smell of a bachelor's quarters. He watched Zelda take it all in, waiting for her to recoil or reconsider, but she simply set down her bag and rolled up her sleeves. "I will start with the kitchen," she said matter-of-factly. "If you could show me where you keep your supplies, I will have supper ready by 6 o'clock. Bennett found himself grinning despite himself. "Miss Hartwell, you have not even seen your room yet, and you have been traveling all day." "I have been sitting in a stagecoach for hours, Mr. Kincaid. What I need now is to move around and make myself useful. Besides, I imagine you and your men are used to something better than whatever you have been eating lately." She was right about that. Bennett and his hands, Carlos, Jimmy, and old Tom, had been subsisting on beans, bacon, and whatever simple fare they could throw together. The thought of a proper meal was almost intoxicating. He gave her a quick tour of the kitchen, pointing out the pantry, the root cellar, the smokehouse, and the henhouse out back. Zelda listened intently, asking practical questions about preferences and dietary restrictions, how many eggs the chickens usually laid, what vegetables were in season. Her questions revealed a sharp, organized mind, and Bennett found himself relaxing. Maybe this would actually work out. "I will be in the north pasture if you need anything," he told her. "The bunkhouse is past the barn. That is where the hands stay. They will come up to the main house for supper." Zelda nodded, already tying an apron around her waist. "I will ring the dinner bell when it is ready." Bennett left her to it, but found himself distracted all afternoon. He kept wondering what she was doing, whether she was managing all right, whether he should have stayed to help. When the dinner bell finally rang at 6 o'clock sharp, he was surprised by how eager he was to get back to the house. The change was remarkable. The kitchen was clean, the table was set with actual tablecloths he had forgotten they owned, and the smell of roasting chicken, fresh biscuits, and something sweet filled the air. His 3 ranch hands were already washing up at the pump outside, eyeing the house with curiosity. "Boss hired himself a housekeeper," Carlos said with a grin. The Mexican cowboy had been with Bennett for 5 years and was the closest thing he had to a best friend. "And if that smell is anything to judge by, we are in for a treat." They filed into the dining room, and Bennett had to suppress a laugh at the expressions on their faces. The table practically groaned with food. Roasted chicken with herbs, mashed potatoes with gravy, green beans with bacon, fresh biscuits with butter and jam, and an apple pie cooling on the sideboard. Zelda emerged from the kitchen, having changed into a fresh dress and tidied her hair. She looked nervous for the first time since arriving. "I hope everything is to your liking, gentlemen. Please, sit down." They did not need to be told twice. For several minutes, the only sounds were appreciative murmurs and the clink of silverware. Bennett took a bite of the chicken and nearly groaned. It was perfect, seasoned just right, tender and juicy. The potatoes were creamy, the beans were crisp, and when he tried the biscuits, they practically melted in his mouth. "Miss Hartwell," old Tom finally said, "I do not know what the boss is paying you, but it is not enough." Zelda's face flushed with pleasure. "Thank you. I am glad you are enjoying it." "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Jimmy asked. The youngest of the hands at 22, he was practically inhaling his food. "My mother was French," Zelda said softly. "She taught me from a young age. After she passed, I worked for several families in San Francisco, managing their households." "Why would you leave the city for a place like this?" Carlos asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I mean no offense, but Sonora is not exactly San Francisco." "None taken," Zelda said with a slight smile. "Sometimes a person needs a change, that is all. And I have always preferred the countryside to the city." Bennett caught the way she deflected the question, keeping her answers polite but revealing nothing personal. She had secrets, that much was clear, but he decided not to press. Everyone had a past, and she was entitled to hers. After dinner, the men returned to the bunkhouse, stuffed and happy. Bennett lingered, helping Zelda clear the table despite her protests. "You do not need to do that, Mr. Kincaid. It is my job." "I have been doing it myself for 2 years," he pointed out. "I can manage helping for one more night. Besides, I wanted to thank you properly. That was the best meal I have had since my mother passed." Zelda paused in her work, her expression softening. "You lost your mother, I am sorry. 2 years ago. She had been sick for a while, but I thought we had more time." Bennett was surprised by how easily the words came. He rarely talked about his mother's death, not even with Carlos. She was the heart of this place. After she was gone, the house just felt empty. "I understand," Zelda said quietly. "I lost my mother when I was 19. The world feels colder without them, does it not?" They worked in companionable silence for a while, washing and drying dishes side by side. Bennett found himself studying her profile when he thought she was not looking, noticing the delicate line of her jaw, the way lamplight caught in her auburn hair, the capable efficiency of her hands. She had a grace about her movements, even in something as mundane as washing dishes. "Can I ask you something, Miss Hartwell?" he said finally. "Of course. Why did you really leave San Francisco? You do not have to answer if you do not want to, but I get the sense there is more to the story." Zelda was quiet for so long he thought she might not respond. Then she sighed, setting down the dish she was drying. "I was engaged to be married. He was a banker, very respectable, very appropriate. Our families were pleased. But 3 weeks before the wedding, I discovered he was already married. He had a wife and 2 children in Sacramento that no one knew about." Bennett felt a surge of anger on her behalf. "What a bastard! Pardon my language. No apology necessary. That is an accurate description." Zelda's voice was controlled, but he could hear the old hurt underneath. "When I confronted him, he acted as though I was being unreasonable. Said many men had arrangements like this, that I should not make such a fuss. He actually expected me to go through with the wedding knowing I would be his mistress, not his wife. You broke it off. Immediately. But the scandal was significant. He spread rumors that I had been unfaithful, that I was mentally unstable. Suddenly, all the families I worked for had reasons why they no longer needed my services. I realized I needed to leave, to go somewhere no one knew me or my supposed reputation." She looked at him directly, her green eyes clear and honest. "So that is my story, Mr. Kincaid. If you want to reconsider your offer, I will understand." Bennett shook his head firmly. "Miss Hartwell, as far as I am concerned, you showed integrity and courage. The man was a liar and a cheat, and you did the right thing. His actions do not reflect on your character at all." The relief in her expression was palpable. "Thank you. You do not know how much that means to hear." "You deserve better than what happened to you," Bennett said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. They finished the dishes together, and Bennett showed Zelda to her room. It had been his sister's before she married and moved to Oregon, a comfortable space with a large window overlooking the back garden, a brass bed with a quilt his mother had made, a wardrobe, and a writing desk. "This is beautiful," Zelda said, running her hand over the quilt. "Your mother made this." "She did. Spent a whole winter on it. I think she would be happy to know it is being used again." Zelda looked at him with such warmth that Bennett felt his breath catch. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid, for the job, for listening, for trusting me. I promise I will work hard to earn that trust." "I think you already have," he said softly. "And please, when it is just us, call me Bennett. Mr. Kincaid makes me feel like my father," she smiled. "Then you should call me Zelda." "Zelda," he repeated, liking the way her name felt on his tongue. "Good night, then. Sleep well." "Good night, Bennett." He left her to settle in, but as he made his way to his own room at the other end of the house, Bennett found himself feeling something he had not felt in a long time: hope. The house already felt different, warmer somehow, more alive. And it was not just the clean kitchen or the good food. It was her presence, the knowledge that he was not alone anymore. He told himself not to be foolish, that she was his employee and nothing more, that she had just escaped an engagement and was hardly looking for romantic entanglement. But as he lay in bed that night, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling into darkness, Bennett could not shake the feeling that his life had just fundamentally changed. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Bennett rose before dawn, as he always had, but now he came in to find Zelda already in the kitchen, coffee brewing and breakfast ready. She insisted that he eat properly before heading out to work, and he found himself looking forward to those early morning conversations, just the two of them talking quietly while the rest of the world still slept. She told him about growing up in Boston, about her French mother who had scandalized her family by marrying an American merchant, about learning to cook and run a household from the time she could barely reach the counter. He told her about building the ranch from nothing, about his mother's determination to make the raw California land into a home, about his dreams of expanding the cattle operation. During the day, while Bennett worked with the cattle and his hands, Zelda transformed the house. She cleaned every room from top to bottom, mended curtains and linens, organized the pantry with ruthless efficiency, and began planting vegetables in the neglected kitchen garden. She was always busy, always productive, but never seemed frazzled or overwhelmed. The ranch hands adored her. She treated them with respect and kindness, learning their preferences, packing extra food for them to take on long days, and even mending their clothes without being asked. Carlos's wife had died in childbirth 3 years prior, and he appreciated having a woman's touch around the place again. Jimmy was half in love with her, though he was too shy to do more than blush when she spoke to him. Old Tom treated her like the daughter he never had, but it was Bennett's reaction to her that concerned him. He found himself thinking about her constantly, watching for her smile, making excuses to come back to the house during the day. He noticed everything about her, the way she hummed while she worked, how she tucked a stray piece of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the graceful efficiency of her movements. When she laughed at something he said, it felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. He told himself it was just gratitude, appreciation for all she was doing for the ranch, but he knew he was lying to himself. One evening about a month after her arrival, Bennett was in his small office going over the account books when Zelda knocked on the door frame. "I am sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I wanted to give you the household accounts." She handed him a ledger book he had never seen before, one she must have bought in town. Inside, everything was meticulously recorded. Every purchase, every expense, organized by category with running totals. It was infinitely better than his own chaotic system. "This is impressive," he said, genuinely amazed. "You did not have to go to this much trouble." "It is no trouble. I enjoy keeping things organized." She hesitated, then added, "I also noticed you were quite low on several supplies, so I took the liberty of ordering them when I went to town yesterday. I hope that is all right." "Of course. You do not need my permission for household purchases, Zelda. I trust your judgment." She smiled at that, pleased by his confidence. "There was one other thing. I noticed the spare bedroom upstairs could be converted into a proper office for you. Right now you are working out of what is essentially a closet. If you like, I could help you move everything up there this weekend." Bennett leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You have been here a month, and you have already made this place run better than it has in years. How did I manage without you?" "Poorly, from what I can tell," she teased, her eyes dancing with humor. He laughed, something he found himself doing more and more around her. "Fair enough. Yes, let us move the office this weekend. I appreciate you thinking of it." Zelda turned to leave, then paused. "Bennett, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why have you never married? You clearly have the means to support a family, and you seem like you would want one." The question caught him off guard. "I suppose I never found the right person. I was focused on building the ranch when I was younger, and then my mother got sick and I was caring for her. After she passed, I just threw myself into work." He paused, then added honestly, "And maybe I was afraid of choosing wrong, of ending up in a loveless marriage like my parents had. They were not happy, they were practical. It was an arrangement between families, good for business. They were cordial to each other, even affectionate sometimes, but there was no passion, no real partnership. My mother once told me that the greatest gift I could give myself was to marry for love, not convenience." He met her eyes. "What about you? After what happened, do you still want to marry someday?" Zelda was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I think I want partnership more than marriage. I want someone who sees me as an equal, who values my opinions and abilities. Someone I can trust completely. The wedding and the title matter far less than finding the right person to share a life with." "That sounds exactly right," Bennett said softly. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, an acknowledgement of possibility. Zelda's cheeks flushed slightly, and she looked away first. "I should let you get back to your work," she said, her voice a touch breathless. After she left, Bennett sat staring at the doorway she had disappeared through, his heart pounding. He was falling for her. No, if he was honest with himself, he had already fallen. The question was what to do about it. The next day was Sunday, Zelda's day off. Bennett was surprised when she appeared at breakfast anyway, setting out food for everyone as usual. "You do not have to work today," he reminded her. "I know, but I enjoy cooking, and you all need to eat regardless of what day it is. Besides, I was thinking I might take the wagon into town for church services, if that is all right." "Of course. Take it whenever you need." "Would you like to come with me?" The invitation surprised him. He had not attended church regularly since his mother's death, finding the sympathetic looks and pitying comments from townspeople too much to bear. But the idea of spending more time with Zelda was appealing. "I would like that," he said. They rode into Sonora together, Zelda in a lovely blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, Bennett in his good suit that felt stiff from lack of use. The town was bustling with Sunday morning activity, families heading to the various churches, shops opening for post-service business. The First Presbyterian Church was where Bennett's family had always attended, a simple white building with a tall steeple. They caused quite a stir when they walked in together, and Bennett was suddenly aware of what people would think, the assumptions they would make. He found he did not care as much as he thought he would. After the service, they were surrounded by townspeople eager to meet the new housekeeper and speculate about her relationship with Bennett. Zelda handled it all with grace and charm, answering questions without revealing too much, making a positive impression on everyone she met. "You are quite the politician," Bennett teased as they finally escaped to the wagon. "I learned in San Francisco that people will gossip regardless of what you do, so you might as well give them something pleasant to talk about," she said pragmatically. "Though I suspect we will be the subject of much speculation after today." "Does that bother you?" "Not particularly. I know the truth of the situation, and so do you. Let them talk." But later that night, lying in his bed, Bennett wondered what the truth of the situation really was. She was his housekeeper, yes, but she had become so much more than that. She was his friend, his confidante, the person who made his house feel like a home again. And increasingly, she was the woman he found himself imagining a future with. He decided he needed to be patient to give her time. She had been hurt badly, and pushing too fast would only drive her away. But he could not help hoping that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to feel the same way about him. The answer came sooner than he expected. 2 weeks later, a man arrived at the ranch asking for Zelda. Bennett was working in the barn when he heard the commotion and came out to find a well-dressed stranger in a fancy suit talking to Zelda on the front porch. Even from a distance, Bennett could see she was upset, her arms crossed defensively, her face pale. He approached quickly, his protective instincts flaring. "Can I help you?" The stranger turned, looking Bennett up and down dismissively. "I am here on private business with Miss Hartwell." "Anything you need to say to her, you can say in front of me," Bennett said firmly, moving to stand beside Zelda. "Bennett, this is Robert Ashford," Zelda said, her voice tight with anger. "My former fiancé." Bennett's hands clenched into fists. "You need to leave. Now." "I will leave when I have said what I came to say," Ashford replied smoothly. "Zelda, I have come to apologize. What happened between us was a terrible misunderstanding. I have taken care of the situation, and I am ready for us to proceed with our wedding plans." "Taken care of the situation?" Zelda repeated, her voice rising. "You mean you abandoned your wife and children? That is your solution? They have been compensated handsomely." "Really, Zelda, you are being quite dramatic about all this. Many men have arrangements. You should feel flattered that I chose you as my official wife." Bennett stepped forward, barely controlling his rage. "Get off my property before I throw you off." Ashford ignored him, keeping his focus on Zelda. "Be reasonable. You are working as a servant on a cattle ranch. Is this really preferable to the life I was offering you? Come back to San Francisco with me. We can put all this unpleasantness behind us." "No," Zelda said clearly. "I would rather spend the rest of my life working than one more day being lied to by you. What you did was despicable, and I want nothing to do with you." "You will regret this," Ashford said, his smooth facade cracking to reveal the ugliness beneath. "No decent man will want you now, not with the rumors I have spread. You will end up alone and destitute." "She has more decency in her little finger than you have in your entire body," Bennett said coldly. "And she will never be alone or destitute. Now get out before I forget I am a gentleman." Something in Bennett's tone must have finally gotten through because Ashford took a step back. "Fine. Waste your life out here in this God-forsaken wilderness, but do not come crawling back when you realize what you have given up." He stalked back to his rented horse and rode away. Zelda stood rigid, watching him go, her whole body trembling. The moment he was out of sight, she collapsed onto the porch steps, covering her face with her hands. Bennett sat down beside her, close but not touching, giving her space to process. "Are you all right? I cannot believe he came all the way out here. I cannot believe he thought I would go back to him after everything." Her voice was muffled by her hands. "He is truly the most arrogant, self-centered man I have ever met. He is also a fool for letting you go." Zelda lowered her hands, looking at him with tear-bright eyes. "Thank you for standing up for me. You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." Bennett reached over and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "You are under my protection here, Zelda. No one gets to treat you that way, not on my ranch." She caught his hand, holding it against her face. "Is that all I am? Someone under your protection?" Bennett's heart began to race. "No, you are much more than that." "What am I then?" He took a deep breath, knowing this was his moment, that he had to be honest even if it risked everything. "You are the person I think about first thing in the morning and last thing at night. You are the reason I rush through my work so I can get back to the house. You are the woman who has made my empty house feel like a home again, who has brought light and warmth back into my life. You are someone I could very easily fall in love with if I have not already." Zelda's breath caught, her eyes searching his face. "Bennett, I am your housekeeper. There are expectations, proprieties. I do not care about any of that. I care about you, about what we have together. These past 2 months have been the happiest I have been in years, and it is all because of you." He squeezed her hand gently. "But if you do not feel the same way, if I am reading this all wrong, just tell me. I will never mention it again, and we can go back to how things were." "That is the problem," Zelda whispered. "I do not want to go back to how things were. I do not want to be just your housekeeper. When I see you every morning, my whole day gets brighter. When you smile at me, I feel like I can do anything. When Ashford said I would end up alone, all I could think was that I would rather be alone with you than married to anyone else." Bennett felt joy surge through him like wildfire. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying I am falling in love with you too," Zelda said, tears spilling down her cheeks again, but this time they were happy tears. "I tried not to, told myself it was too soon, that I needed to be careful after what happened, but I cannot help it, Bennett. You are everything I thought did not exist, everything I stopped hoping for." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, feeling her heart beat against his. "I love you," he murmured into her hair. "I love everything about you. I love your strength and your kindness, your laugh and your determination. I love how you have made this house into a home, how you treat my hands with respect, how you organize everything down to the smallest detail. I love you, Zelda Hartwell, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much." She pulled back just enough to look at him, her face radiant despite the tears. "I love you too, Bennett Kincaid." He kissed her then, a gentle, tentative kiss that quickly deepened as years of loneliness and walls came crashing down. She tasted like salt and sunshine and coming home, and Bennett knew with absolute certainty that he would never want to kiss anyone else for as long as he lived. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zelda laughed shakily. "Well, that certainly complicates the employment situation." "Marry me," Bennett blurted out, her eyes went wide. "What, marry me?" he repeated, more certain now. "I know it is fast. I know you just got out of an engagement, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, and I want you to be my wife, not my housekeeper. I want to build a life with you, a real partnership like you talked about. I want you to be my equal in everything, to run this ranch together, to make all our decisions together. Marry me, Zelda." She was quiet for a long moment, and Bennett felt panic start to creep in. Had he pushed too hard, too fast? But then she smiled, that brilliant smile that lit up her whole face. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." Bennett let out a whoop of joy and pulled her into another kiss, this one exuberant and celebratory. They were still kissing when Carlos came around the corner and stopped dead in his tracks. "Well," the ranch hand said with a huge grin, "it is about damn time." They broke apart, laughing, and Bennett kept his arm firmly around Zelda's waist. "Carlos, you are looking at the future Mrs. Kincaid." "Congratulations, boss, Miss Zelda." Carlos tipped his hat. "Though I should mention that Jimmy owes me $5. I bet him you two would be engaged within 3 months. You were betting on us?" Zelda asked, torn between amusement and exasperation. "We all were." "Tom said 6 months, but Jimmy thought you would make the boss suffer longer." Carlos winked. "I had faith in you both." The news spread quickly among the ranch hands, and that evening they had an impromptu celebration. Zelda cooked a special dinner, and Carlos produced a bottle of whiskey he had been saving for a special occasion. They toasted the engaged couple, told embarrassing stories about Bennett, and welcomed Zelda officially into the ranch family. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Bennett and Zelda sat together on the front porch swing, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, watching the stars wheel overhead. "Are you sure about this?" Zelda asked quietly. "We have only known each other 2 months." "I have never been more sure of anything," Bennett replied. "But if you need more time, if you want a longer engagement, I understand." "No, I do not need more time. I know what I want, and it is you." She tilted her head up to look at him. "When should we get married?" "As soon as possible." "Tomorrow, if we could," she laughed. "We need at least a few weeks to plan something proper. I want to write to my father, and you should tell your sister. We should have the banns read at church." "A month, then." "Can we get married in a month?" "A month sounds perfect." They kissed again, slow and sweet, a promise of the future they were building together. Bennett thought about how lost he had been just 2 months ago, how empty his life had felt. And now here he was, engaged to the most remarkable woman he had ever met, feeling like the luckiest man in California. The next month flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. Zelda wrote to her father, who responded with cautious approval and a promise to send a wedding gift. Bennett's sister, Emily, wrote back with enthusiastic congratulations and regrets that she could not make the journey from Oregon in time for the wedding. The banns were read at church, causing a sensation in town, and Zelda became the subject of intense interest among the local women. "They are trying to figure out if I am a gold digger," Zelda told Bennett one evening, more amused than offended. "Let them think what they want. Anyone who actually knows you can see that is ridiculous. Mrs. Calloway, the minister's wife, has been very kind. She offered to help with the wedding preparations. That is generous of her. I think she wants to make sure we do things properly." Zelda grinned. "She gave me a very careful lecture about the expectations of a rancher's wife. And what did you tell her?" "That I was more interested in partnership than expectations." Zelda moved into his arms. "Though she did raise a good point about living arrangements. We should probably not share a room until after the wedding for propriety's sake." Bennett groaned. "I knew there would be a downside to doing this properly." "It is only a few more weeks," she teased, kissing him lightly. "I think you can survive." He pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. "I am not so sure about that," but they maintained propriety, even though it nearly killed Bennett. He moved back to the room at the far end of the house, and they kept their physical affection within acceptable bounds, though the tension between them built with each passing day. Zelda threw herself into wedding preparations with her characteristic efficiency. She made her own dress, a simple but elegant creation in cream-colored silk that she had found in Sonora's general store. She planned the reception, arranged for flowers, and coordinated with Mrs. Calloway on all the proper details. Bennett, for his part, worked to make the house even better for his bride. He hired painters to freshen up the interior, built a new bookshelf for the library that Zelda had created in one of the spare rooms, and commissioned a beautiful dining table from the town carpenter to replace the old one. "You do not have to do all this," Zelda protested when she saw the new table being delivered. "I want to," Bennett said. "I want everything to be perfect for you. It already is perfect. You are here." The wedding day arrived with perfect summer weather, the sky a brilliant blue and the temperature warm but not oppressive. They were married at the church in Sonora, with Carlos serving as Bennett's best man and Mrs. Calloway standing up for Zelda. The ceremony was simple but moving, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Bennett kissed his bride with enthusiasm that made the congregation laugh. The reception was held at the ranch, which had been transformed for the occasion. Tables were set up under the trees, laden with food that Zelda had spent days preparing with help from some of the ranch wives. Nearly everyone in Sonora came, curious to see the Eastern woman who had captured the heart of one of the county's most eligible bachelors. "You did it," Carlos said, clapping Bennett on the shoulder. "You found yourself a good woman." "The best woman," Bennett agreed, his eyes following Zelda as she moved through the crowd, gracious and charming to everyone. As the sun began to set, Bennett claimed his wife for a dance. Someone had brought a fiddle and the music was lively and joyful. He held her close, ignoring the proper distance that dancing usually required, reveling in the fact that she was finally, legally, irrevocably his. "Happy," he murmured. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Zelda replied. "Though I will be happier when all these people leave and we can be alone," he laughed. "That makes two of us." Finally, as the stars came out, the guests began to depart. Carlos had made sure all the ranch hands would stay in the bunkhouse that night, giving the newlyweds privacy. Bennett and Zelda stood on the porch, waving goodbye to the last of the guests, and then they were alone. "Finally," Bennett said, scooping Zelda up into his arms. She shrieked with laughter. "What are you doing, carrying my bride over the threshold properly?" He kicked the door shut behind them and carried her through the house to the master bedroom, which he had spent the past week preparing. Fresh paint, new curtains, and a beautiful quilt that Emily had shipped from Oregon covered the bed. He set Zelda down gently, suddenly nervous. "If you need time, if you want to wait, we can." She reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "I do not want to wait. I want you, Bennett. I want to be your wife in every way." They came together with passion and tenderness, years of loneliness dissolving in the warmth of their union. Bennett had thought he understood what it meant to love someone, but being with Zelda showed him he had only scratched the surface. This was what his mother had meant, this complete merging of hearts and souls and bodies, this sense of finally being whole. Afterward they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." Zelda tilted her head up to kiss his jaw. "Thank you for being patient with me, for giving me time to trust again." "You were worth the wait. You will always be worth the wait." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, the empty house finally and fully transformed into a home. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, though mostly a joyful one. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, navigated the small conflicts that come with sharing a life, and built the partnership they had both dreamed of. Zelda was true to her word about wanting to be an equal participant in running the ranch. She took over the account books entirely, proving to have a better head for numbers than Bennett did. She also had ideas for expanding their operation, suggesting they invest in dairy cows in addition to beef cattle. "The market for fresh milk and butter in Sonora is completely untapped," she explained, showing him calculations she had done. "We have the grazing land and the water supply. If we start with just 20 dairy cows, we could turn a significant profit within a year." Bennett studied her figures and had to admit she was right. "All right, but you would need to hire help. I will not have you working yourself to death churning butter." "I was thinking we could ask Mrs. Chen from town. Her husband died last year, and she has been struggling to make ends meet. She has experience with dairy." They hired Mrs. Chen, who proved to be exactly what they needed. Within 6 months, their dairy operation was thriving, and Zelda's careful management meant they were indeed turning a significant profit. Bennett found himself consulting her on all major ranch decisions, valuing her insight and business acumen. "You are a better partner than I ever could have hoped for," he told her one evening as they reviewed the quarterly accounts together. "We make a good team," Zelda agreed, leaning against him. "Though I think we should expand the beef herd next year. Prices are climbing and we have the capacity." "Always thinking ahead." He kissed her temple. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You put an advertisement in the paper for a housekeeper." They both laughed, remembering how it all began, how a simple want ad had changed both their lives. In the spring, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. She told Bennett one morning over breakfast, nervous about his reaction. "Are you sure?" he asked, stunned. "As sure as I can be. The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday." Bennett let out a whoop of joy and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around. "We are going to have a baby," Bennett put me down. "You will make me dizzy." He set her down but kept his hands on her waist, grinning like a fool. "How are you feeling? Are you all right? Should you be resting?" "I am fine. A little tired, a little nauseated in the mornings, but the doctor says that is normal." She placed her hand over his. "Are you happy?" "Happy." "Zelda, I am ecstatic. We are going to be parents." The pregnancy was mostly easy, though Zelda had strong opinions about not being treated like an invalid. She continued working around the house and keeping the books, only gradually slowing down as her belly grew. Bennett was constantly worried about her overdoing it, which she found both touching and exasperating. "Women have been having babies for thousands of years," she reminded him when he tried to stop her from kneading bread. "I am pregnant, not made of glass. I know, but you are precious to me. I cannot help wanting to protect you. You can protect me by trusting me to know my own limits." Carlos and the other ranch hands were delighted about the baby, treating Zelda like royalty and constructing an elaborate cradle in the barn workshop. Mrs. Chen and the other ranch wives organized themselves to help once the baby arrived, and Zelda found herself surrounded by support and community in a way she never had in San Francisco. "I was so alone there," she confessed to Bennett one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "I had employers and acquaintances, but no real friends. Here I have a family." "You do," Bennett agreed. "You have brought so much to this ranch, Zelda. Not just the work you do, but the warmth, the sense of community. People love you. I love them too. I love this life we are building together." The baby arrived in early October after a long but ultimately uncomplicated labor. Bennett paced outside the bedroom for hours while Mrs. Chen and the doctor attended Zelda, nearly wearing a path in the floorboards. When he finally heard the baby's first cry, he practically burst through the door. Zelda was exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "It is a boy," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We have a son." Bennett approached slowly, awestruck. The baby was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. Can I hold him?" Zelda carefully transferred their son into Bennett's arms. The baby weighed almost nothing, but to Bennett it felt like he was holding the entire world. He looked down at his son, at this new life he and Zelda had created together, and felt tears blur his vision. "Hello there, little one," he whispered. "I am your father. Welcome to the world." They named him Matthew Bennett Kincaid, after both their fathers, and called him Matt. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's green eyes and his father's stubborn chin. Bennett was amazed by how much he could love this tiny person, how every milestone, every smile, every new achievement filled him with joy. Zelda adjusted to motherhood with the same competence she brought to everything else, though Bennett made sure she had help. Mrs. Chen spent more time at the house, helping with Matt and the household duties so Zelda would not be overwhelmed. Carlos carved wooden toys, and old Tom fashioned a tiny cowboy hat that made everyone laugh. "He is going to be spoiled rotten," Zelda said, watching Bennett rock their son to sleep one evening. "He deserves to be spoiled. Look at him, he is perfect. You are a besotted father, guilty as charged." Bennett carefully laid Matt in his cradle and came to sit beside Zelda on their bed. "Thank you. For what? For everything. For coming to this ranch, for taking a chance on me, for making this house a home, for giving me a son, for being the most remarkable woman I have ever known." Zelda leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am the one who should be thanking you. A year and a half ago, I was running from a scandal, heartbroken and alone. You gave me a job when I needed one, but more than that, you gave me love and respect and partnership. You gave me a home and a family. You gave me everything I ever wanted but thought I would never have." "We gave it to each other," Bennett said, wrapping his arm around her. "And this is just the beginning. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." They sat together in the lamplight, watching their son sleep, the house quiet and peaceful around them. Bennett thought about how different his life was from that day when he stood on the porch, lonely and discouraged, watching for a response to his advertisement. He had been looking for a housekeeper, someone to cook and clean and make the practical aspects of life easier. What he had found instead was a soulmate, a partner, a love that transformed everything it touched. Zelda had taken his empty house and filled it with warmth and laughter and life. She had taken his lonely existence and shown him what it meant to truly share your days with someone. She had made him whole in ways he had not even known he was broken. The years that followed were busy and full. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing in both size and profitability. They added to the dairy operation, expanded their herds, and eventually purchased adjoining land to accommodate their growth. Zelda's business acumen became well known in the area, and she was often consulted by other ranch wives about managing household accounts and budgets. Matt grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and everything about it. By the time he was 3, he was following Bennett around, trying to help with chores, and declaring he would be a cowboy when he grew up. Bennett taught him to ride when he was 4, starting him on a gentle old mare that tolerated the boy's enthusiastic but clumsy handling. When Matt was 5, Zelda became pregnant again. This time she was even more confident, and Bennett was slightly less nervous, though he still fussed over her constantly. Their daughter, Catherine Rose, arrived in the spring, named after both their mothers. She had Zelda's auburn hair and Bennett's brown eyes, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. "You are going to spoil her even worse than you spoiled Matt," Zelda teased, watching Bennett rock Catherine with infinite gentleness. "She is my little girl. I am allowed to spoil her. You are lucky I love you. I am the luckiest man in the world." As the children grew, the house filled with the sounds of laughter and running feet, of arguments and games and bedtime stories. Bennett and Zelda navigated parenthood together, making decisions as a team, supporting each other through the challenges and celebrating the victories. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Bennett arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch the children and took Zelda on a picnic to the spot where they had first kissed, that day when her former fiancé had shown up and everything had changed. "You remember this day?" he asked, spreading out a blanket under the same tree. "How could I forget? It was the day you told me you were falling in love with me. I was terrified you would reject me. I was terrified you were not serious." Zelda settled beside him, accepting the glass of wine he poured. "Instead, here we are, 10 years later, with 2 children and a thriving ranch and more happiness than I ever dreamed possible. You ever regret how things turned out? Wonder what your life would have been like if you had stayed in San Francisco? Not for a single moment." Zelda set down her glass and took his hand. "Bennett, you gave me everything I ever wanted. You see me as an equal, value my opinions, trust my abilities. You are my partner in every sense of the word. Our children are healthy and happy. Our home is filled with love. Why would I regret any of that? I just want to make sure you are happy, that you have not sacrificed too much." "I have not sacrificed anything. I made choices, good choices that led me to exactly where I want to be." She kissed him softly. "I love you, Bennett Kincaid. I loved you 10 years ago, and I love you even more now." "I love you too. You are still the best thing that ever happened to me." They spent the afternoon reminiscing, laughing over memories and planning for the future. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Bennett pulled Zelda close. "Thank you for answering my advertisement," he said. "Thank you for taking a chance on a woman running from scandal. Best decision I ever made." The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their growing family. Matt grew into a capable young man who shared his father's passion for ranching and his mother's head for business. Catherine became a spirited girl who could ride as well as any boy and had strong opinions about everything. When Matt was 14 and Catherine was 9, Zelda surprised them all with another pregnancy, delivering twin boys she and Bennett named James and Samuel. "We are going to need a bigger house," Bennett joked, looking at the chaos of 4 children running around. "The house is fine. What we need is more patience," Zelda replied, but she was smiling. They added on to the house anyway, building new bedrooms and a larger kitchen to accommodate their growing family. The ranch expanded as well, until the Kincaid Ranch was one of the largest and most successful operations in Tuolumne County. But through all the growth and change, Bennett and Zelda remained the steady center, their partnership as strong as ever. On quiet evenings, when the children were in bed and the ranch was peaceful, they would sit together on the front porch, the same porch where Bennett had first seen Zelda step down from that stagecoach. They would hold hands and talk about their day, share their concerns and dreams, and simply enjoy being together. "You remember how empty this house used to feel?" Bennett asked one such evening. "I remember. The first time I walked in, I could feel the loneliness in the walls. And now?" Zelda looked around at the house that had become so much more than just a building. Through the open windows, they could hear Matt practicing his reading with Catherine, the twins playing some complicated game in their room. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the pie Zelda had baked for dessert. Photographs lined the mantel, capturing moments from their life together. Their wedding day, the birth of each child, ranch gatherings, family celebrations. "Now it is filled with life and love," she said softly. "It is not just a house anymore, Bennett. It is a home, a real home. That is all because of you. You made this place what it is. We made it together. That is what partnership means." Bennett pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I cannot imagine my life without you. I do not even want to try." "Good, because you are stuck with me. For better or worse, remember, it has been all better as far as I am concerned." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. Bennett thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that first advertisement to this moment of perfect contentment. He had been looking for a housekeeper, someone to cook meals and keep things tidy. Instead, he had found the love of his life, a woman who challenged him and supported him, who made him laugh and made him think, who had transformed his empty house into a home filled with warmth and joy. Years later, when Bennett was in his 60s and their children were grown with families of their own, he and Zelda sat on that same porch, now weathered by decades of wind and sun. Matt was running the ranch with his wife, showing the same dedication and skill his parents had. Catherine was married to a lawyer in San Francisco but visited often with her 3 children. The twins had headed north to Oregon to start their own ranching operation. "We did good, did we not?" Bennett said, watching Matt work with the cattle in the distance. "We did very good," Zelda agreed. Her hair was silver now, and there were lines around her eyes, but to Bennett she was as beautiful as the day she had arrived. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one." "You?" "Only that I did not put that advertisement in the paper sooner." Bennett took her hand, still fitting perfectly in his after all these years. "Think about it, Zelda. If I had waited another week, or if you had not seen the advertisement, or if you had chosen a different job, we might never have met. But we did meet. That is what matters." "True. And I have spent every day since thanking whatever fate brought you to my door." Zelda squeezed his hand. "I was so lost when I came here, heartbroken and scared and trying to run away from the mess my life had become. I thought I was just looking for a job, a place to hide and heal. Instead, I found you. I found purpose and partnership and love. I found my home. This house was never a home until you were in it. It was just walls and a roof. You are what made it matter." They sat together as the sun set over the ranch they had built, the home they had created, the family they had raised. Bennett thought about all the years behind them and whatever time they had left ahead, and he felt nothing but gratitude. He had needed a housekeeper and found a soulmate. He had advertised for help with practical matters and received love beyond measure. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Bennett leaned over and kissed his wife, just as tender and loving as the first time, so many years ago. "I love you, Zelda Kincaid." "I love you too, Bennett." Always and forever. The house behind them glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming, filled with the memories of a lifetime spent together. It was no longer an empty house needing a housekeeper. It was a home, made whole by love, partnership, and the remarkable woman who had walked through the door one summer day and changed everything. The wind whispered through the trees they had planted together, carrying with it the sound of their children's voices from inside. The next generation already making their own memories in the house that love had built. Bennett and Zelda sat together in the gathering darkness, hands entwined, hearts still as connected as they had been on their wedding day. The ranch would continue, passing from their hands to their children's and someday to their grandchildren's, but the foundation they had built together, the love and partnership that sustained it all, would endure forever. The empty house had become a home, the lonely rancher had found his soulmate, and in the end, that was the greatest success of all. Not the size of their land or the profits from their cattle, but the life they had created together, the family they had raised, and the love that had sustained them through everything. It was a legacy that would outlast buildings and bank accounts, carried forward in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by their story. As the moon rose over the California foothills, casting silver light across the ranch, Bennett and Zelda went inside together, closing the door on another perfect day in their life together. The house welcomed them as it always had, warm and familiar, a testament to what could be built when two people found each other. and chose to create something beautiful together. Their story had begun with a simple newspaper advertisement, but it had grown into something extraordinary, a love that had transformed not just a house, but two lives, proving that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected beginnings, and that home is not a place, but the person you choose to share your life with, the one who makes every day brighter and every challenge easier to face, the one who turns an empty house into a home filled with love that lasts forever.